Can I be real with you for a second? This entire past week for me has been pretty awful. And the reason is I've just been struggling to put out this video that I've been working hard on. It's about the link between Yukio Mishima, a famous Japanese poet, and Friedrich Nietzsche, and how I believe that he's basically the last true Nietzschean. And, well, spoiler alert, he's dead. He died a long time ago. But in that process, I was just like, oh my God, this is going to take so long. What? I need to post on YouTube. I need to work. Like, I'm being unproductive. And I started thinking to myself, wait, what is this? Like, what's this idea, this idea planted in my mind that I need to constantly be hustling? I need to constantly be productive. Like, if I just put out one amazing video, that's going to be way better than putting out like 7 or 10 or 14 different videos. So now I'm posting another video on this topic instead. And in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you a story, first of all, but I'm also going to talk about Nietzsche's darkest essay that he's ever wrote, but also one of his most insightful. It's called The Greek State. And I'm also going to talk about how TikTok is ruining the world. Not just ruining the world, but it's also a symptom of this hustle culture thing. How can all these things be related? I'm going to try my best to tie it all together in this video, okay? So if you want to just jump around to each individual topic instead of watching everything together, I completely understand. But I think if you stick around and listen to me talk about each topic, when I bring it all together at the end, it's going to make a lot more sense, I think, because I'm just going to spoil sort of the general thesis of the video, which most people say not to do or else people aren't going to watch the video. I don't really care. I'm just going to be real with you. I think social media, especially once short form video content became popular and everybody has a super advanced device that has a great camera on it and everybody can just speak their mind. Basically anybody can be an influencer now. I think that's a really bad thing because the vast majority of people should not be influencers. They shouldn't be artists. I know that sounds like a terrible, like very, uppity, pretentious, arrogant thing to say. And the reason that it shouldn't is because what's going to end up happening is that great artists aren't able to shine because of that. And you might be thinking to yourself, oh, Kevin, look at you. You think you're a great artist. You want to shine. You can't shine because there's all these other shitty influencers. I'm not saying that, right? I could be one of the shitty influencers myself. I'm fully honest. Like, it's possible that I'm contributing to the problem by adding too much noise to the space so that great art can't thrive. And great art, if great art doesn't thrive, then cultures decline. This is the claim that Nietzsche is going to make in The Greek State, which I'll talk about in a little bit. First, in order for you to even understand what I'm talking about, or for me to like bring it down a bit more into reality of what I'm saying, I want to give you a little bit of a scenario, okay? A little bit of a story. So I want you to imagine two different film schools, and they're entering a film competition that's being held nationwide. And these two film schools are the two most esteemed film schools in the entire country. All right, so each of the film schools decide to have a different strategy. The first film school, they have about 100 students. They say, hey, how about each and every one of our students independently make their own film, get their own actors, write their own scripts, and each and every one of them are going to submit a film into the film festival. Sounds reasonable, right? So what does the second school do then for this film festival? They decide that they are going to get the best and brightest singular person to lead the entire movie, and then the entire school is going to work around that one person in order to create the best film possible. So they find some guy who's basically like the next Steven Spielberg, the next Denis Villeneuve, or whatever his name is, the Dune director, you know what I mean? Somebody who's extremely talented. And so they give him all the resources, everything that he needs in order to create the best movie possible. Basically, the entire school is dedicated to this one movie, except there's one guy leading it. It's his vision, similar to Quentin Tarantino movies, right? Just like, sure, there's other people working on it, but Quentin Tarantino's the guy. He wrote it, he directed it, he produced it, he set up the whole thing. This is their strategy. Now imagine both of these schools show up to the film festival. The one school with their one film, and then the other school with their 100 small films, small low-budget films. Who do you think wins the competition? I think if we were using our minds a little bit here, we know that probably the school that just had that one person, that one super director, that super creative mind, that it had a vision for the movie and everybody trusted that vision, and they did their job of being a good director, a good cinematographer, a good whatever, instead of just having one individual kid do all of those things, because all the other kids are doing all those other things too, and they don't have anyone else to help them, even if they might be pretty smart. I think it's pretty clear that that one school with that one movie probably wins the film competition. Now here's where things get dark. Imagine that same super gifted kid that the entire school rallied around. Imagine he actually attended that first school that had the 100 entries into the film competition, and he just ends up getting lost in the crowd, right? Even if he does his best with the resources he's given in order to create a great film, the vision that he has cannot possibly come to life in the same way as he could with the school that gives their 100% support behind him. And because of that, nobody ever hears about his movie. Even though it might be the best movie coming out of that particular school, it just gets stomped on by all the other submissions from all around the country. It's not that he's not talented enough or that he's not great enough. It's just that he didn't have the circumstances required in order for him to create great art. More specifically, he didn't have an army or a bunch of workers or people around him to support him to make that vision come true. Friedrich Nietzsche believed that the modern world, his modern world, and especially he would think of ours if he was alive today, is just full of people trying to be too equal. It's full of people not letting great people rise up through the ranks. And because of that, the culture is inevitably going to decline and fall. Because if you live in a world where great paintings or great films, great musical competitions can't rise to the top because there's too much noise and there's not enough support by a large group of people to elevate that one idea led on by one great person, then similarly it's going to be impossible to have one great man, one great military leader, one great politician, one great person that changes everybody's perspective on the world for the better to be able to rise up. That is inevitably going to lead to cultural decadence, cultural decline, and civilizational collapse. It's not necessarily that these art forms not being able to be as good as they possibly could be because of the influence of the herd, that directly causes the collapse, but it's a symptom of the same thing. It's the symptom of the fact that the herd has taken over, that great people cannot rise anymore. And, the next, Napoleon or the next great political or military leader that moves humanity forward, even if in the present they cause a lot of destruction, because Napoleon, he's a very controversial person, so maybe he's not the best example. But if there aren't the right conditions for that person to rise up, then the society you're part of is inevitably going to crumble. So he can say this better than I can describe it, so I will just read it from the man himself. So this is an excerpt from The Greek State, which is an essay that Nietzsche wrote pretty early on in his career. I made a little bit of an abridged version so that I'm not just reading the whole essay. But anyway, here it goes. Here in the modern world, in one and the same man, the greed of the struggle for existence and the need for art show themselves at the same time. Out of this unnatural amalgamation has originated the dilemma, to excuse and to consecrate that first greed before this need for art. Therefore, we believe in the dignity of man and the dignity of labor. The Greeks did not require such conceptual hallucinations, for among them the idea that labor is a disgrace is expressed with startling frankness, and another piece of wisdom, more hidden and less articulate but everywhere alive, added that the human thing also was an ignominious and piteous thing, nothing, and the dream of a shadow. Labor is a disgrace, because existence has no value in itself. Labor is a disgrace indeed by the fact that it is impossible for man, fighting for the continuance of bare existence, to become an artist. In modern times, it is not the art-needing man, but the slave who determines the general conceptions, the slave who, according to his nature, must give deceptive names to all conditions in order to be able to live. Such phantoms as the dignity of man, the dignity of labor, are the needy products of slavedom hiding itself from itself. In order that there may be a broad, deep, and fruitful soil for the development of art, the enormous majority must, in the service of a minority, be slavishly subjected to life's struggle, to a greater degree than their own wants necessitate. At their cost, through the surplus of their labor, that privileged class is to be relieved from the struggle for existence in order to create and to satisfy a new world of want. Basically what Nietzsche is saying there, and this isn't necessarily his own beliefs, although it kind of is, he's really just describing what the Greeks thought. So if you just think Nietzsche sucks, fine. You probably don't think the Greeks sucked, right? You probably think that, oh, the great art, like humanity was at its peak in terms of creating great art forms and whatnot with the ancient Greeks. Well, what did the ancient Greeks think? The ancient Greeks thought that labor was stupid, that labor was shameful. They believed that you needed all this leisure time in order to be an artist, and that in order for great men to create great art, there needed to be a slave class that did all of the work. And then ideally, the master class, or whatever you want to call it, that's creating the art, moves humanity forward, and like kind of a rising tide lifts all boats, including the slaves. It's like in order for the society to function well, that there needs to be that class. Socrates talks about in the Republic, where there's like the golden caste, the golden soul, the philosopher kings and whatnot, the artists. Then you have the warrior class, and then at the bottom you have sort of like the farmers, the slave class. All of them are necessary for societies to function, and the vast majority of the population is going to be in that third class, that bronze soul, that bronze caste, or whatever you want to call it. And he also believes that modern ideas like the dignity of man, the dignity of labor, equal rights, they are all ideas from sort of that slave class, and that slave class, it's a sign that slave class has taken over. And then because they've taken over, they've valued these things that aren't necessarily creating a new future which is needed by having a top elite class of people who are creating great things based off of the backs of this slave class. And he's very explicit here. He actually says, like, I think verbatim, that the top class exploits the bottom class in order for them to create great things. Because I think a lot of people who are, I don't know if they're like anti-Marxist or whatever, they're like, no, the elites don't exploit the working class or whatever. It's like Nietzsche's basically saying, yeah, they do, and this is why they should do it. Kind of interesting because him and Karl Marx had the same sort of ideas about exploitation of the working class and whatnot, but Nietzsche not only did not think it was a bad thing, he actually thought it was a very necessary thing for humanity to create great things. And if humanity didn't have that system in place, it's inevitably going to fall apart. Now, obviously, I'm not saying we should bring back slavery or whatnot. And I'm not just saying that because it doesn't sound nice. I think it's unnecessary. I think the first example that I gave of the film school and how a lot of people work toward a certain project, but there's a certain thought leader that's actually leading the movement, I think that is more than adequate enough. And we've actually seen this in practice. People creating great things like Steve Jobs with Apple. All right, Steve Jobs was the visionary for everything, and then he had everybody work for him, including that original guy, Steve Wozniak. He was the guy that created the computer and whatnot, but Steve Jobs was the artistic guy that had the creative vision for the future. And then now you see Apple as a company after he died, they basically haven't come up with anything new, right? They're just resting on all of the creative ideas that Steve Jobs had way back in the day. Let's look at Game of Thrones, the show. Okay, so you had George R.R. Martin, the guy who created the entire Game of Thrones universe. He wrote out this entire storyline, and then the directors of Game of Thrones, they just followed what he wrote, right? They followed his lead, and the show was excellent. But eventually the show caught up to the book, and George R. R. Martin hadn't written a new book in like 10 years or something. They thought that he would have finished the book by then. He didn't. And so these guys didn't know what to do. And so they just started making up their own stuff. And I'm sure they had a team of people all collectively working together to make this happen. And then the show ended up being terrible after they caught up to the book, because the original thought leader, the original guy, and just one guy, right? Not a team of people, just one guy, because he didn't come up with the thing, everything else fell apart. It didn't matter if they had billions of dollars, an entire studio, a whole group of people trying to come up with a new idea for the show once they ran out of the material. That paled in comparison to what the original guy, George R. R. Martin, could have came up with. And that's why the show went to shit. So let's look at the modern day now, where the modern creative has to try to compete with all of this noise around them and not actually having a bunch of people helping them to create something new. They're similar to that second film school that I talked about, of everybody creating their own separate films, being their own videographer, their own writer, their own director, their own whatever. And because of that, nothing new and great is happening, because there's so much noise, there's so much people you have to compete with. And to top that all off, in the modern day with social media, especially with TikTok and whatnot, the currency is people's attention. And so people are going to do whatever they can to get people's attention, and that's what's going to get views, and that's what's going to get pushed by the algorithm, that's what's going to get promoted, and that's what's going to get advertised. And then that creates a cycle of everybody being like, oh, I'm just going to do whatever it takes in order to get people's attention for the longest amount of time possible, rather than actually creating something that's good, creating good art that takes time. Imagine that same genius from the first film school if he's forced to create a 1-minute movie instead of a full-length feature. First of all, those are completely different skill sets. Second of all, a full-length feature is something that is much more of a beautiful piece of art, because you can say a lot more in a longer medium. But imagine that kid would have to do the 1-minute short film instead, just because he's forced to, because that's what's in demand. Then, and he's never able to realize how great of an artist he really is. And so personally for myself, I follow and see a lot of creators who make really interesting content, but they only do it in short form. And I think it's because they feel like they're forced to, because these social media algorithms, they force everybody to do that. One of the reasons that they force everybody to do that is because everybody has one of these smartphones now. Everybody can be an influencer now. And so if everybody's an influencer, there's going to be so much noise. And in order for you to even be able to raise your hand and for anybody to be able to see it in a sea of hands, you have to do something ridiculous. You have to do something eye-catching. You have to do pattern interrupts and stuff. You have to show like somebody doing something ridiculous at the beginning of a video and then go into it, rather than actually like setting the stage or something, because everybody has, freaking the attention span less than a goldfish now, and it's becoming worse and worse with these social media algorithms. And hey man, artists, creatives, they need to make a living too. And so they are going to do that first before actually be creating something great. The Greeks themselves thought that artists need leisure time in order to create great art. And Nietzsche says himself here, I'm going to quote him again. He says, "Yet the proposition is still valid that labor is a disgrace indeed by the fact that it is impossible for man, fighting for the continuance of bare existence, to become an artist." He's basically saying there that it is actually impossible for you to create great things if you're also trying to just survive at the same time. And now that we're all equal in the modern day, instead of saying, hey, that kid or that group of people is extremely talented, they can create great things on their own. Let's give them the opportunity to create great things, and then we will ride along the path of success with them. Let's have them at the helm. Instead, everybody gets all insecure and their vanity and their pride is hurt. And they're like, oh, what do you think? You're better than me? I can create great art just like you asshole. And so now everybody's a creator. This is why social media content, TikTok, Instagram, it's all trash. It's, there's some great stuff in there, don't get me wrong, but that great stuff can be great if it had a longer a better platform, a longer medium to use. This is one of the reasons why I like YouTube and I don't like Instagram and TikTok and whatever as much. I'm going to force myself to end up start posting on there because that's where the people are. People have less than an attention span. Hopefully, I can reach out to people who are caught in that nefarious little, doom scrolling loop and pull them out of it and actually watch the stuff that matters, like watch longer form content where we can actually discuss ideas. Hopefully, that's my plan at least. But I don't like the medium itself. This is why hustle culture is killing greatness, because in order for you to achieve greatness, you have to do something that is different that most people cannot do. And there are certain conditions that need to be met culturally, societally, materially, in order for an artist to create great things. Again, I'm going to quote him one more time. Labor is a disgrace indeed by the fact that it is impossible for man fighting for the continuance of bare existence to become an artist. By Nietzsche's definition, by his interpretation of Greece, which I think is the correct one, it is impossible for you to achieve greatness if you are constantly trying to just feed yourself, if you're constantly being a part of hustle culture. It's literally impossible. And all that's going to happen instead is you're just going to have small, little, shitty art pieces that happen frequently rather than one great art piece that takes a decade or decades to create. There's a famous American author named Cormac McCarthy who created this book called Blood Meridian, which is widely regarded as one of the greatest American novels of all time. Dude, Cormac McCarthy, in order for him to write that book, he basically took over a decade off of writing anything else. He moved out into somewhere in the Southwest just to research for the book, and it took him 10 years to create the book. Imagine nowadays somebody trying to do that. That just doesn't happen. The reason that he was able to do that, by the way, is he was given this grant. I don't know what it's called, but he was given a grant for like 500 grand or whatever, right? Just basically these people that trusted him just said, hey, you're a great artist, you're a great man, we're gonna give you 10 years to just focus on this stuff, just whatever you need, we're gonna get it paid. And then he created one of the greatest novels of all time. So obviously it worked out. In the modern day, in modern hustle culture, you really think that that's ever going to happen? Of course not. Instead, people are just going to be like, well, how many social media followers do you have? How many times do you post a day? What's your average view retention time on your YouTube shorts and your Instagram reels? Did you make sure that you used the captivating hook at the beginning of the video? In a hustle culture world, people do not give an F about the quality of the work, and all the quality of the work collectively is going to degrade and go down over time, for the exact reasons that Nietzsche laid out in his essay here. So I'm going to bring this back full circle to myself because, well, as Nietzsche himself actually said, any sort of philosophy, whenever somebody starts philosophizing, it's the personal confession of the author. So for me, I just sort of came to this idea because, or just started thinking about these things, because I was like, damn, this video on Yukio Mishima is going to take a while, but oh my God, I need to post a video this week. I need to be in the good graces of the algorithm. Well, basically, I'm a laborer right now. I'm a laborer more than an artist. And if I'm a laborer more than an artist because I have to stick to some schedule in order to be in the good graces of the YouTube algorithm with my small baby channel, it's like this little fire that I just started, and I just have a few embers now. The hardest part of starting a fire is just starting it, right? Once you actually have some embers there, then you have to feed it oxygen and whatnot, and then it just grows, and then it gets to the point where it just starts growing by itself. I'm like at that stage now on my channel, right? At least that's the way I perceive it. And so with me, it's just like, oh crap, I need to do this. I need to labor, I need to work hard. But it's coming at the expense of me actually having a good quality video, because I was very tempted to just film and post and edit the video now before it was ready to be finished, because I need to do that, because as a new baby creator that's trying to grow. And so, but I'm glad that I was able to come across this essay or be reminded of it to show like labor, hard work, on the surface it seems fine to say that it's a virtue, but it has all of these after effects. Just assuming that hard work or labor itself is virtuous. It's a slave-minded mentality to think that. And a lot of times what ends up happening as a result of that is great things are impossible to create because of it. Well, at the very least, I was able to use this idea to create a new video. I actually gave this video a lot of thought. When I was making the other video, I was like, you know what, my mind started to go to this, and then I started to like take a lot of notes and outline this whole video. And I think I'm pretty glad with how it turned out. I mean, I will have to see when I'm editing it, but now for me, I'm not saying that I need to have like a whole team of people to like help me create these great things. Obviously, it would be great if I could. I feel like I haven't earned that yet. I want to earn that right. But it definitely does come at the expense of me creating great things. And, you know, not just myself, there's probably other creators or people that you enjoy watching that probably go through the same struggle, where they just have to be like their own boss, their own director, their own sound producer, their own editor, their own businessman, their own sales guy. They're like, there's like everything, you know, and that comes at the expense of the actual art that they're trying to create. And, you know, it is what it is. That's just the world that we live in, man. That's the hustle culture world that we live in. If you don't like it, don't play the game, right? Don't hate the player, hate the game, whatever the hell you want to call it. But if the game is rigged enough and the game is not conducive to creating the best players, I should say, then maybe the game itself should be questioned. That's all I'm saying. But full disclosure, I am going to be part of this hustle culture thing. I just have to do it. It is what it is. You're in the world. You have to deal with what the rules of the world are. And so on Instagram, I'm actually going to start posting every single day, but I want to, that's a goal that I have in May, but I want to make sure that they're all high quality content that's not just trying to, you know, manipulate you into clicking XYZ and, you know, here's a pattern interrupt, blah, 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 blah. Okay, watch my video now. Like the worst ones that I've seen is like they'll show like a bunch of there's these self-improvement pages that show a bunch of these like hot women about to take their clothes off, and then all of a sudden they're like, hey, you shouldn't be watching this stuff. It's like, sure, dude, but you're the one that actually put it in my face, so like you're kind of part of the problem. I understand why you're doing it, but you're doing it to capture people's attention. It's a very Machiavellian way of doing things, except it's kind of an insult to Machiavelli because it's not very subtle. It's really just annoying and crass and stupid. Regardless, I'm gonna start doing some more short form content. That's just what I gotta do. It is what it is. Thanks so much for watching. There isn't necessarily a solution to this video. As you can see in the channel description, the new description of the channel, which I think is an accurate description of what this channel is about asking dangerous questions and occasionally giving dangerous answers. I don't know if I gave a dangerous answer here today, but I definitely asked quite a few dangerous questions. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Please like the video if this is something that you found valuable. It's going to help spread in the algorithm. I really want to grow this YouTube channel. And if you're watching to this point, I have a feeling that you want this YouTube channel to grow too. I'm not going to be posting as frequently on YouTube anymore. I want to make sure all the videos that I post on here from now on are high quality. However, I am planning on posting every single day on Instagram. So if you want to see my thoughts, my whole thought process before I make any video or creative endeavor, go ahead and follow me on Instagram. I'll have it linked in the description. Thanks so much for watching as always, man. And the next video you'll see will be about Yukio Mishima. And I can't wait to share it with you guys. It's going to be a great video. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.